All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin.
Yeah, you're here. It's,
Everybody was kung fu fighting in 1974, Patty. I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody was kung fu fighting.
everybody, all of them.
Well, I knew some kung fu moves.
I wasn't around. I'm gonna have to take your word for it. Whether the
Those
history
kicks were
books-
fast as lightning, Kevin. Like it was crazy. It was a crazy time. I don't know where all of a sudden this reinvention of hit. Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Now we know Tim dropping truth bombs here on A Free Solution.
Clearing up some disinformation out there.
Yes. Important things to know. All right. So besides the historical revisionism to who was or was not kung fu fighting, we do have a few other things to talk about today. Daylight savings time being one of them. It's coming up soon. It's gonna happen on Sunday. The government is gonna steal an hour of sleep for us. It will confuse me, my child, my pets. Everyone is going to be upset. So we're gonna talk about
dogs.
that.
I didn't even think about my dogs. They go. I hate it. I hate government incompetence day.
It is. Just that should be the new thing that we celebrate on that day every year. Twice a year.
Nationwide.
Yeah. And so we got that. We'll talk about this this bill in Florida to have bloggers get licenses if they're writing about government officials. And Tim, I know you had a couple other topics too about the land bank stuff, and we'll see if we can get to that, and we'll see. So it goes.
We have a minute or two to talk about our favorite TV pundit is at it again. It hurts already. I'm not even going to say his name yet.
Well, all right. Well, we'll see if we get to that one. But we're going to get to hopefully all that stuff, or at least some of that stuff. And of course, again, the most important issue, daylight savings time. Number one issue for Congress to abolish. They have not abolished it yet, guys. It's not real news. All right.
Don't let's dispel the disinformation out there live on the radio.
All right. Yeah, we'll talk about it. This is maybe breaking to some of you. You might not have heard, or you might have misunderstood.
Yeah.
But my goldfish is gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
So you gotta explain the government to your goldfish. If you won't, who will?
That's right. We got it.
All right, we're gonna go live with the radio show in just a second. In 5.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. We are gonna dispel some myths about daylight savings time. We're gonna solve some problems today.
Oh yeah. No, we're gonna talk about some daylight savings time. We might get to a few other things. There's a blogger bill in Florida. I mean, we even talked before the show about some of the new stuff coming out in New York State too. Maybe we could talk about it. We got like 10 topics. We probably won't get to half of them. You know how it goes, folks. But thanks everyone.
About Tucker Carlson.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe we'll get to it. Maybe we'll get to it in the bonus show. So this is a radio show on WYSL, but also we're live on this nice Tuesday evening for our live streaming audience on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson pages, the Tim O'Connor pages, all of those. We're live. You can comment and participate in the show if you'd like. But
please do, guys. Please do. We love the comments. We love the conversation. That's what we're here for. That's what we do it for.
Mm-hmm.
This is you are the reward. The people out there in the audience.
100%. It's part of the conversation, so it makes it fun. But daylight savings time. All right. Should we abolish it, Tim? Go.
Well, it's universally reviled. I mean, we're talking somewhere around, Kevin, somewhere around 70% of the people in the United States who are affected by this nonsense, okay, this nonsensical government incompetence, like, want it to be done away with. They want to get rid of it. And here we are, still. Guys, we need to dispel a possible disinformation or misinformation that's out there. That 2022, a bill was introduced called the Sunshine Protection Act in the Senate, passed the Senate unanimous voice vote. The House of Representatives, led by Nancy Pelosi, guys, who I revile, but they did not even take it up for discussion or debate. And guess what's coming up this Sunday?
Yeah. I can't believe they didn't even take it up. Like why? Like what special interest is like the House of Representatives protecting for daylight savings times? Like I don't get it. It like, and just to reference a couple other polls, there's a Monmouth University poll done last year, again when this bill was coming up. So only 35% of Americans wanted to keep resetting the clock, so the other 65 didn't. YouGov poll said that 59% of Americans wanted to see daylight savings time made permanent, which is what this bill would have done. Like it would have, and instead of doing fallback, it would just been that was the last spring forward, and then we're done. That's it.
It could be the anti-crime lobby, Kevin, because the spring forward, there is actually a statistically significant reduction in crime.
I'm sure.
Because it light out later in the day.
Maybe. You know, and also I used to be more in favor of this. I kind of lean more towards like we should just have permanent standard time, because there's also changes like when you do daylight savings time, when you do the spring forward, right? In more northern latitude places, it means it's darker for longer. So in places like the Pacific Northwest, it's not getting light out until like 8:30 at the beginning of this, right? Like it's pretty late. And who's out at that early morning? Well, commuters for one, but also school children. There's an increase in deaths of young children who from motor vehicle accidents, in part because it's darker, right? So that's, and in addition to all the other bad stuff that happens with daylight savings time, like the health effects, there's increases in heart attacks, traffic accidents, all this stuff, just because we're changing the clocks. And I think you and I are on the same page of we just leave it one place or the other. Like I even care which at this point, just one place or the other.
I would just adjust my day, which it doesn't cause, other than that, when the clock falls back and it gets dark in the evening, that's where the biggest hindrance comes in for me, because all of a sudden I'm driving when it's light out, and then I'm driving when it's dark out. And it coincides with close to the beginning of deer season. Deer are particularly active that time of year. And it's a freaking bloodbath on the roads when they change it like that. It's just it's a mess, man. I can't honestly. And you know what? It was like started in Germany to help like work with World War I and conserve energy, allegedly, purportedly. But over the years, that has not statistically been proven to be a fact. It does not change energy consumption at all. It's a net loss, net gain, because in the winter when we do it, people have to heat up their houses earlier in the morning, and so they still have to use energy. It's nonsense.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And we do have a Facebook user who has a longer thing about where it's first enacted in Canada and whatnot. And the American farmers, this user says, were opposed to daylight savings time because regardless of what clock said, their cows weren't ready to be milked until later in the day. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Like the animals, it's all the same to them, you know.
Hilariously, one of the defenses of it was we do this for the farmers because they need the light to harvest their crops in the summer. And it's like the light still exists, you joker. What is wrong with you? Like, hello. If farmers need to work late, again, their cows are going to want to be milked when they get milked.
You got to milk when the cows need to be milked. You got to feed the chickens when they need to be fed. You got to harvest the crops when they need to be harvested. It doesn't matter what the clock says. The clock is an artificial construct. It's you just do the chore when you need to do the chore. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just it's literally mind blowing that we're living in something that was given to us by warmongers. Like that's the other that's a part of it that drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but so as we're saying though, it's a did the House never took up the bill. The Senate did that, like it was like unanimous too, wasn't it? It was like it was
It passed the Senate,
overwhelming.
unanimous voice vote. 100 U.S. senators stood up and said, "I get we want the."
Like how often does that happen in Congress, right? Especially in the Senate where they're notorious for debating stuff. Like and that like that's their whole point, right? That's what they're
Nobody wanted
supposed
to
to
go on
do.
record as supporting it. Like they you know what I mean? Like it. Of course, they named it the Sunshine Protection Act, which obviously kind of scares me because that could
They're
mean anything. But
protecting, yeah.
yeah, it could. It's like fuzzy puppies. No, this makes owning dogs illegal. Like it just that kind of thing. But so theoretically, they've taken steps to put this into place. It's been well argued well argued. I'm sorry. The public nearly unanimously supports it. How do we have elected representatives that continue with this farce? And guys, it's been off and on, like World War I, World War II, off on. Okay, somewhere in a response to the Vietnam War, I think that's when it went on and stayed on in the
Yeah,
United
and there was a point in time where they abolished daylight savings time, but they didn't leave it very long. It ended up going away, in part because they did what this bill would have done, which is to make it permanent. And there were a handful of deaths from children who were in early morning, like pedestrian accidents, and
Yeah.
then they changed their mind.
Just an amazing farcical thing that we've committed to that the government can't get out of its own way to take care of. It's almost kind of like a black eye, like one more black eye on the level of competence that we have being displayed from our elected officials. Maybe it shouldn't make me this mad, but this is one thing that really drives me nuts.
Right. It should be simple, right? Like it should be like, hey, there's an agreement here. The Senate passed it. Like, well, why not? Just or at least like have the debate about it. Like there wasn't much like debate among like members of Congress. Like, no, we can't do this because permanent daylight savings time would be bad, or defending switching clocks, or like we should go to standard time. Is it like, okay, sure, like I can accept. There's people like we had a guest on the show a while ago, Scott Lincecum, and he's very much in favor of standard time only, and he always posts about it. Like, go follow his Twitter. He's a interesting guy from Cato, but he's always posting about that stuff. And I can get that. I can respect that. Like, we should just switch to standard time. Okay, sure, I get it. Fine,
Right.
It's one or the other. But
it almost doesn't matter as long as we stop monkeying around with something that isn't ours to monkey around with, right?
Yeah.
We have a circadian rhythm. We have a natural response to our day. Why screw up every business in the country twice a year?
Yeah.
Why do that?
Does mess with the businesses too, and it's always strange, like because I in the line of work that I do, sometimes I'm working with like international clients who don't have daylight savings time. Now suddenly you have to like explain to them, okay, well, I know we were 6 hours off, but now we're 5 hours off, and so I mean, like they get it, like a lot of them work with Americans, but it's like a weird thing to wrap your head around.
The only time I enjoyed it was back in the day when I was a hard drinking young man, and I would go out and 2 o'clock would roll around on that second Sunday of November, and all of a sudden it would be 1 o'clock again, and we'd get an extra hour of hanging out and drinking, which, to be perfectly honest, a lot of those times I didn't actually need.
No,
I just want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, right. You don't really need it. I've done before too. I was hanging up posters for like the Gary Johnson campaign in 2016, and like I was out when the switch happened, and like at a bar, like drinking with folks, and it's kind of fun to experience once, right? But did I need to do it? No.
No, I've always been kind of a night owl. I was a restaurant professional, so a decent amount of my ill-spent youth would be hanging out in a bar after work. And so that Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, when all of a sudden it was 1 o'clock, was a big cause for celebration.
Of course, why not? And let's get to a couple of these comments here. This Facebook user says, "You mean the sun doesn't come up earlier when you set our clocks back?" Listen, contrary to popular belief, the sun does not rise or set based on the commandments of our leaders. It just does its thing. And in fact, the sun's not really doing anything. The Earth's spinning, but the government does not, in fact,
I don't know,
cause the sun to rise or set at any time.
Prove that.
It's just gonna keep doing its thing.
Unprovable theory.
Get this count. Steve Becker on Facebook. Split the difference. Change by half hour. Sure, man. Like, why not? Why not? We'll mess everyone up. And like the global standard time. Just do half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who. I could just see the arguments over that, though. But like that would be the ideal solution, right? It's kind of a compromise. Just live with it. Honestly, there's mountains and mountains of evidence that it damages young people's ability to sleep correctly. Just fix it, you freaking jokers. What the heck is going on? It's an embarrassment.
And we'll get to this longer one in a minute, but Patricia says time is human creation. Yeah, it is. And it's funny, like it's not been a thing that long. Like you go back to before timekeeping was needed for train schedules. In fact, in the beginning of like when train schedules happened, like they were just using sundials for like the approximate like time of day it was. And that created problems because if you're a little ways east or west, the sundial is going to look a bit different. So you need to have a standardization over a certain area of like what time is something supposed to arrive or not arrive, or what time are you supposed to meet someone. It started to become a problem. And that's why we got the standardization of time in the 19th century.
But is a fascist construct.
Fascist construct. Why are you taking it to the extremes, Tim?
Maybe
some of us have to show up to work and do certain things at certain times, Tim.
That's fascist.
About to rail about our corporate overlords and controlling our time.
Yeah, I hate them. I hate them too.
And then Decided Facebook user says, Energy Policy Act of 2005 amended the Uniform Time Act of 1966 by abolishing the year-round daylight savings time and changed the start and end dates of daylight savings in order to lengthen the previous daylight savings time. Yeah, so like it just extended it so we'd have daylight savings time longer, right? So like a bigger percentage of the year, because most people, especially ones without like younger kids, like tend to like the daylight later in the day. So I switched a little bit only because like now when my son gets up at like 6:30 on Monday, it's going to be dark out, and I know it. Tim, I can't hear you.
Aha, I had the mute button on. My apologies, everybody. I had a couple of really witty comments, and you guys missed them. And I can't even go back because it wouldn't make any sense now. But from Facebook user who seems to be on fire tonight, I personally know I feel less compelled to commit crime when I wake up later. Thank you very much. See, the government is protecting us from crime.
Yeah. And I got a comment from Jim Dayton on Twitter who's saying, let's just change it by 30 minutes and leave it there next round.
Yeah,
another one for the Steve Becker plan there.
Steve Becker is a genius. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So I said I don't know if folks would accept that one, but that's what it is.
So we should probably start setting up our next conversation, because even though I could rant about daylight savings for the whole show. I think we should probably start transitioning into a new topic.
Yeah.
So should we talk about the blogger registration bill presented in Florida?
Yeah, no, we'll talk about that one. So there is a bill in Florida. This is now I'll share a link to this. It's by Senator Jason Brodeur. I'll say his name is. And the bill is called information dissemination. And what it would require is that if you're a blogger writing about an elected official, let's say the governor, lieutenant governor, any member of the state legislature, you would have to register with the states, and you have to and this is only if you're getting paid for this. have to register with the state if you're receiving any compensation for the post that you're making, and you'd have to do it within 5 days and disclose who is paying for that blog post.
So
Now I will say this, like a big caveat on it, this bill's probably not going anywhere. Like it's not,
right.
like it's just some random person, but like it's a thing that's out there, and I think it's worth talking about, like the dangers of like why you don't want licenses for this type of thing. Like let's not take for granted that this is a immensely bad idea.
It is an immensely bad idea, but I'm going to be able to argue the pro of it at once we get there. But let me just go on record as saying I think that this is a horrible, horrible idea, that it's dangerous, and that it's literally it is an absolute affront to freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if we had to record and pay like that? We were talking about political figures.
Yeah. I mean, luckily we're not really getting paid anything.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
we'd
be
like
nice if
to,
we
but
were.
like that's what the sponsors are for, right? But
Yeah.
and we disclose those, but I wouldn't want to register with New York State. Like, yeah, like imagine if like every time we talk trash about like Governor Hochul or praised her. I don't think I've done that yet, but
No.
if every time we talked about her, we had to like disclose who was paying us and register with the state to do that. And again, every time we register, like the whole point of like a registration, the whole point of like licensing is so the government can take a right away from you and sell it back to you and then reserve their right to revoke your ability to engage in what should be an otherwise rightful activity, right? Like speech.
Yeah, it's the heavy hand of control yet again, and it's a suspension of freedom, and it's a suspension of the First Amendment, and again, so at its very basics, it is an absolutely horrible idea. And fascist has been my big word lately, but it's fascist. Okay, like this kind of manipulation of our rights it's okay. So the bill's going nowhere. You want to know
Yep.
why he did it though? I can tell you why. How are we doing on time?
We have less than a minute left.
All right, so I think that I should tell you guys why he did this after the break. And don't let me, Kevin, do not allow me to
No.
let it slip out during bonus time in between breaks.
No, we're gonna head to break. We'll get to some of these comments that have popped up since, and then we'll talk about why this person may have done this. All right, so thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Appreciate all of y'all listening today. We're gonna be back here on the radio show on WYSL in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right, we're good.
Good, yeah. So how was that for a nice little segue? Keep them hanging.
Yeah,
But I do have
It's good. No, it's good, Tim. Look at it. Tim is a pro here.
There's a reasonable, there's a we are pro bono heroes. We are.
Yeah,
there is a reasonable reason why they want this done, and I'm not going to disclose it now. So when we go back, though, I want to talk about it, and I think people should know, like, why they want this bill out there. It still makes it. It doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's a horrible bill and a terrible idea.
Yeah, we'll do that. And we got this comment too from Real Map One on YouTube. So they tried it years ago, and school kids were getting hit by cars because of the morning darkness, and they brought it back. Yeah, I was kind of mentioning that earlier in the show. Like it did change at one point in time. Like they did what the Senate bill would have done and made daylight savings time permanent year round. As I mentioned, there is some sort of risk with it's now dark when a bunch of these kids are going to school, and so does that increase the risk? Would it have happened anyway? You know, the kind of opposition forces rallied around that. It's hard to say, but that's kind of why it went away. As
Yep.
You know, and then some folks say it's don't like having to drive into work and it's dark out, right? Like so, mostly it's a Pacific Northwest thing. Like here in upstate, it doesn't really matter as much, but we're not that far north. And
this is always a favorite. They take a right and make it a privilege, and then they charge you money for it. And
that's right.
That's what they're going to do with this blogging. Not that it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But that is the goal of this is to charge you a $25 per day per blog post that you fail to register after you make it about a political figure.
Yeah. All right. Well, we should get back to the actual zero, so we'll go back in a couple seconds. Hold on. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
Yeah, before the break, Kevin, I was about to lay it out why they want this bill in the state of Florida, and maybe a lot. It wouldn't surprise me if some support grows for this kind of bill, because I'm telling you right now, when I go on Twitter, there are people that are incredibly popular saying weird things about politicians, that the only excuse for them to be as popular as they are is that they're fluffing their posts with money, and they're getting paid by somebody to make these posts. And so that's why people want this to be open information. I would be okay with it somehow being open information, because I feel as though the source of the money is hidden. But we all know, like, you can tell who the Democratic operatives are. We can tell who the Republican operatives are. Believe me, some of the more popular ones are all getting paid to do this job. All right.
Yeah, sure.
All the registers it. Can I just assume that they're getting paid?
I mean, yeah, if you want. I mean, you can assume all you want. No, it's free country, man.
Brooklyn Dad Defiant and Joe from Jers, I know their money's coming from the DNC. I know it is. And I know they're promoting their tweets, and they're garbage. They have no content, no real content to offer. They're nonsense clowns. And there's
probably, like, in some ways we get that, right? Like on Facebook now, if you're paying to promote a post, you're paying the platform to promote a post, it gets disclosed. If it's anything political, you have to say where the funding source is coming from, which sometimes is annoying when I want to boost like just our show or something. Like, it's a political post, you got to like make sure you have a registered thing, and it's got to say paid for by Kevin Wilson, and all right, paid for by my personal bank account, whatever. Yeah. And then, like, I have to give my government ID to Facebook, and like this whole thing. So like there's already like some of this, like the disclosure part happening. And two things about that. One is this doesn't include newspapers. Like they explicitly exempted newspapers, and they said like a similar publishing institutions, right?
Real media. Not
real media. Targeting, it's just targeting like independent media, right? Like, so, you know, that should tell you something too. And yeah, you know, it's right. So it's exempting the the old media, but yeah, I don't think that you should have the right to know who's paying every single person, whatever, right? Like we that's half the fun, is wildly speculating who's a shill and not a shill, right? Like that's
no, I think that's a good point, right? And like I can speculate that why they're popular is that there's sort of a troll farm like on Twitter that also participates in boosting these guys' reach by liking and participating with their weird comments. And you can see the same people like when Joe from Jers posts, then there's like 42 people that are also somewhat popular, also respond, agreeing with her. And then there's like 37 libertarians on there, like pointing out the flaws in her logic, and like just completely
and boosting the engagement and getting it shown to more people. And
absolutely, man. Rush Limbaugh did a show about it. He said like most Twitter engagement is from 10 IP addresses in Nebraska. So I believe it.
No, I mean, it's a bit more complicated than that, but like this was something that kind of came up with the whole like Russiagate stuff, right? Like with the like, because people want to know, like, well, is any of the content you're seeing being promoted by foreign governments? You know, like, are they paid Russian trolls? You know, it came up in relation to like the rally that the Libertarian Party had. Like, are any of these people literally being paid by the Russian government? That was like an accusation that went around, and in some cases, yes, they were literally being paid by the Russian government. In other cases, no, they just had positions that people found disagreeable, and like you have to hash it out.
Yeah, a lot of people are taking that hard turn towards Russia and China are not the enemy here, and Guys, I'm telling you,
No, they're still bad.
they're bad. They're bad. They're human rights bad. They're human right. They're bad. They're gonna be bad. They're not changing the way they're doing things. Just be anti-war, man. Like you don't to be anti-war doesn't mean you're pro-Russia or pro-China, right? And you don't have to take that turn down that road of yay Putin, yay Xi Jinping. Like you don't
Yeah,
have to
well, that's a
take
weird. Yeah, I saw one of the speakers that was like praising President Xi. Why? No, it's terrible. It's so bad. like well, like again, it's weird. It's some of these like anti-war folks kind of get so caught up in hating the U.S. They're like, yeah, we're gonna like talk about how our enemies actually good. Wait, what? No. China's still bad. China is a just massively awful, oppressive, authoritarian government. Like literally as far as you can go from libertarianism. Don't.
I mean, they jail people for their religious beliefs. They believe in child labor. They control like the lockdown that we experienced in the United States. They were welding people in their freaking apartments. Okay, they're welding their gates shut so they can't get out.
Yeah.
Like we're bad. Like we made mistakes, man. But like
Yeah,
China's next level.
Keep some perspective, right? Like the
Yeah.
pervasive like monitoring, like it's social credit score system that like keeps you from being able to travel and get jobs and do all sorts of stuff. Like it's
And look, I get it, man. This Ukrainian thing looks like a money laundering scheme. This Ukrainian thing looks bad on a lot of levels. There's lots of real problems with funding a proxy war, with NATO expanding its borders. There's real problems with that. That doesn't mean I'm pro-Russia. That doesn't mean I'm pro-Putin. Like, guys, I don't want children killing other children in foreign countries over bullshit. Ooh, sorry about that.
You're gonna make me work now.
Now you're gonna have to beep that, Kevin. I apologize.
Go find that now.
You get me on the war, anti-war stuff, and the weirdness in the world, and so that one slipped out. I apologize, everybody.
Don't worry about it. It's the radio isn't even gonna hear it. Move on.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that too. But that's the reality, guys. Like, let's be the sensible anti-war people saying, look, there's got to be a better solution. We need to come up with it sooner rather than later. People, the death tolls are mounting. The mainstream media is starting to report on how many people are dying in Ukraine more accurately and more often, and they've missed and they've buried stories about it. And all of that stuff is gross and inappropriate and unreal to me. Okay. So that's it. Be anti-war. You don't have to be pro-Putin. You don't have to be pro-China. Okay, they're still bad countries. Yeah, we're still the U.S. is still better than them. Sorry.
Yeah, like it is. Yeah, like I have no particular love for the U.S. government and all the terrible things that it does, but also like keep some perspective, right? Like it could be so much worse.
It could be so much worse. It is so much worse.
We can continue to criticize the U.S. government and also be like, I'm very glad that we are not living in China and that like, yeah, we have to understand like where they're coming from and how they oppress people. And if, we want to fight for liberty for everyone everywhere, like don't make weird excuses for them. Like, and say like every single time someone like is mad at the government of China, it's just a CIA plot. Weirdest thing.
A lot of times it is a CIA plot, though, Kevin. Let's be clear. Like the CIA has its dirty hands in a lot of things, man.
Man, they're too busy like dropping acid and like they're really doing stuff.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe
no, they are doing bad stuff.
They are pretty bad. Let's be honest. Like, and the FBI has a numerous amounts of failings, and the failings seem to grow. These things are real, guys. Like, I get it. I get being mad at the U.S. government because I am very disappointed in our government. But that doesn't mean I'm going to all of a sudden be pro-Putin. And I'm not going to buy his rhetoric any more than I buy Joe Biden's, to be perfectly honest with you.
It's not neither or situation. But I want to steer us a little bit back to like the topic at hand of like the blog post stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, like that's, we've shifted a bit from that. But like the whole kind of point of that conversation though, like how we ended up on this tangent was, okay, like we want to know who's benefiting financially from writing a blog post, right? Like, but again, to me, like I think that really there's no there's no right to that. Like we can speculate, we can ask, someone can choose to disclose or not disclose, and we can evaluate the information based on it. But I don't think that there's any interest of the government or even any other individual about like where payment is coming from. Like we can just have a conversation about it. More speech would solve this issue and help us get to the bottom of it. Again, if you don't trust who's like getting paid by what, okay, cool. And if it is an actual political source, if it's a PAC funding or political action committee or super PAC or whatever, there is some disclosure around that. Like remember in 2016 when all those ads came out against Gary Johnson, but it was like from like a weird third party group. Like eventually we figured out like who was funding that stuff, trying to make Gary Johnson look uncool and like relative to Hillary Clinton, for goodness sakes.
Oh my God, she was the worst.
Yeah.
Still is the worst.
Still is, yes.
The worst.
But but eventually, like, people figured out like who was funding this, and you can go out and do your thing and have speech. Like I'm one of those like weirdo libertarians. Like I'm like a little bit more comfortable with some anonymity in terms of like donations funding speech, because I think the people who are trying to solve that problem will create much worse problems in terms of privacy and the ability to like spread a message than the problems that we have now with some level of anonymity in certain types of political speech.
That's a very complicated way of saying that you and I are willing to accept bags of cash for our efforts as political pundits. Bags of cash.
That's right.
That's it.
We won't say where they came from. We'll just have our bags of cash.
That's right. That's right. We'll take them.
So we will be patiently awaiting our bags of cash. They have not shown up yet. There must be some mistake. So if you have that, please personally deliver your bag of cash so that you can know that we got it.
Yeah, that would be great. And I will split my bag of cash with Kevin. I will drive to Rochester and give him half a bag of cash.
Yeah, there we go. Half. All right.
So
take your word for it.
How are we doing on time? You're so much better at keeping track of
that. We have 3 minutes.
All right. To introduce our next segment, Donald Trump has come up with some crazy concepts over certain periods of time that literally sound, to me, I hear them and it's like, that sounds like communism. That sounds like nonsense. That sounds like nothing I want to get involved in. One of his ideas that sounds a little scary and dystopian to me is this concept of freedom cities, which he's using as a new campaign kind of strategy. And like, there is something that might not be bad to what Donald Trump is saying, but freedom cities where he's like having this design contest and he's just going to, if he gets elected, he's going to build them on federal land, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Shiny city on top of a hill, rhetoric. Yeah. But there might be a good idea in there, Kevin. What do you think? Think we can find it?
I think that if we dig and make wild assumptions about what would actually happen, we might be able to find a good idea in this. I get the feeling that if ever actually enacted, which probably also will not happen, it would be just the most spectacular boondoggle.
He's a builder by trade, Kevin. They would be the most beautiful, shining cities on a hill to ever have been built in this beautiful country.
That is certainly in the realm of possible outcomes. Just, I got to be honest, I don't have a lot of faith in that. It's nothing against him. I don't have a lot of faith in any government with a heavy hand in trying to centrally plan any sort of organized environment, especially from scratch. Because look at what happened in China with all their like ghost cities. They're building all these cities, building. And there's complicated reasons behind that aren't just about the state. Although once you get like 2 or 3 steps deeper, it kind of is. But they have all these like goofy, unused cities and expensive rail networks that they get to brag about, and they create, look all this cool stuff they created, and it's like it's just not being used. And Yeah, roads a country when that happens. Like it takes a lot of resources to do that stuff, and you'd be a lot better off if you just let the market do its thing.
Oh, careful. You're giving away the secret to what
Yes.
I was going to be pointing at.
That's right. All right. So we have to head to break now for our WYSL listeners. We're going to be back in just a few minutes here on A Free Solution. Talk to you soon. All right. And we're out.
All right. So part of the bonus content, I want to deal with this. John Barron points out, and you and I have talked about this in the past, and a number of people are becoming wise to it. The new $800 million or $800 billion assistance package, right, includes 800 Stinger anti-aircraft system, 2,000 Javelins, 1,000 light armor, 6,000 AT-4 anti-armor system, 100. So I'm going to break this down from my perspective. What they're doing is giving away our old inventory, which I don't know if that's going to hurt us or not. And then they're basically selling it, and then they're going to record it as a profit transaction or a sales transaction on their side of the ledger, and they're going to claim that we grew the economy when in fact it doesn't really feel like out there the economy's growing. There's some businesses that are doing really well, and there's some businesses that aren't, and so war is about making money. That's how they play with the balance sheets. Is they give away our old equipment, they call it an aid package. We still got to replace that stuff on some level with newer.
I mean, that's how they can kind of justify. It's like, well, we're gonna have to pay the contractors to replace this stuff eventually anyway. We might as well give it to people who need it, whose country is being invaded, right?
And they'll sell it on eBay.
Yeah, right.
I mean, profit's profit.
Yeah, a little bit. Just here and there. And yeah, with this type of thing, and like I'm generally sympathetic to the cause, less sympathetic to the massive amounts of money that the U.S. government is spending on this stuff.
Yeah.
And also less thrilled by the fact that there's no auditing to be done on any of this. Which
isn't that the amazing thing? There's no oversight as to how our equipment's getting used and how our money's being spent. Like almost zero. Here's Zelensky. Here's a pile of stuff to kill people with, and a ton of cash to go along with it.
Well, here's the weird thing is like Zelensky kind of wants the auditing to be done too, because he came in on an anti-corruption platform. Like he knows there's a problem with corruption in Ukraine and came in wanting to deal with that rather than dealing with a Russian invasion, right?
Right. That's true.
And so if the US got involved in anti-corruption efforts in a more concerted way, in a less politically biased way, Donald Trump's impeachment, then that could help him solve a problem that has that makes the war effort difficult, right? Again, if requisition officers are taking this stuff and selling it out on eBay, that's a handful less things that are killing Russians that are occupying his towns, right?
Right.
So
right. And that's the problem. He knows it's too big of a situation for him to micromanage it anyway, right? He's not going to be able to watch it. 1,000 pistols. He's not going to be able to watch 800 Stinger anti-aircraft systems, 2,000 Javelin missile systems, 1,000 light anti-armor weapons. It's just so. Yes, he may in fact be in favor of less corruption. He does. He dresses the part though, Kevin. When he showed up at Washington D.C. wearing his camo sweater.
So you're just gonna do it because he was wearing fatigues? Come on, that's not a real argument.
I hated it. I really did. It was
he's a man. He's coming from the front.
He wasn't. He's
putting on the show.
He has time to sit down and schmooze with I don't know, some joker and talk about the environment, like Sean Penn or something like that. Look, some of what's going on is always with war. The first casualty is the truth. And so Zelensky is playing a role. Sometimes I'm uncomfortable with the way he plays that role. Greta Thunberg, whining about being on a train when she has 20 bags. It is definitely traveling first class and has all the luggage storage that she wants. Oh, it was a crowded, horrible trip. It's shut up. You know what I mean? It's fake.
Oh, sure. Right. You're putting on a show for PR purposes. Some folks are going to eat up, and I get it. And we talked about this since the beginning. There's a lot of like PR stuff going on, right? Like about a lot of it's like marketing, right?
Yeah.
And I get that, right? Like that's what I do for a living. You're putting a spin on something, and people are going to consume like a small bit of information relative to like the whole scope of information they consume in any given like week. And you want to put your best foot forward. It's good, Mark. Like I can't fault them for it, but like it's incumbent on us to say like, that makes sense. That's nonsense. That is a lie. That is dangerous. Like, and be able to discern all of those. And we just have to be critical thinkers about all of that stuff.
We all watch the Hunger Games. We see how propaganda plays a role in any successful uprising. I mean, it's reality.
Yeah. Oh, I got I got a book you'd find interesting. I just read one. It's called Red Rising. Parts of it feel a little bit like commie propaganda, but there's like a Hunger Games and Game of Thrones element to it. That's my book recommend. You should check it out. And Steve Becker, no, I don't think either of us gave up beer for Lent.
No, I am
part because I'm not Catholic, but
I was at some point in my life considered Catholic, but Lent has not really doesn't impact my behavior.
No,
perhaps.
Yeah, I'm drinking a local beer, a brewery that exists on my street.
Right on your street.
Yeah, on like a Three Heads Brewing. So good. Not a sponsor, just a fan. Tiny Kind. So it's a session IPA.
I just have to drink light beer because if I drink anything else, I'll swear even more. And Kevin will have to.
All right, but I suppose we should get back to the show in a minute. And we'll get back to the topic of freedom cities. Freedom cities. And the thing that you said, I there's a part of the freedom cities thing that I thought you'd be excited about. And we'll see if that's what you end up mentioning. But we'll go back in at 47. See, John is also enjoying some.
We do what we do, brother.
Something local. Good for you, man.
All right. Take care of your neighbors.
That's right.
That's why I got beef in my freezer.
Yeah. All right. Back in 5. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. And before the break, we were talking about one of Trump's campaign concepts, freedom cities. Just here's the thing that I like about the discussion about freedom cities is that it's going to make everybody aware of just how much land the federal government owns.
Yeah.
640 million acres the U.S. federal government owns. 640 million acres. One interesting thing, two of the places where, Kevin, property values have exploded in the last few years, Nevada and Boise, Idaho. Somewhere around in Nevada, 80% of the land in Nevada is owned by the federal government. Did you know that?
Just a massive percentage. Most of it is it's owned by BLM, not that BLM, Bureau of Land Management. And yeah, it's just federal land sitting there. And if you remember, there's like it always comes up like there's discussions about who can use this land and what can they use it for. Can ranchers use this land? Can hunters use this land? It's always a constant conflict. Should be preserved for ecological protection purposes, whatever. But most of it, like, they could sell chunks of it off if they wanted to. They could do other stuff with it. It's just there.
There's some sort of a purported housing crisis going on in the United States, which
there is.
The problem with what created the housing crisis is the government created the housing crisis by stricter regulations, by zoning, by taking people's rights away to develop their own property and use it the way that they want to, by chasing people out of areas that have housing with high taxes and properties are falling into the ground. The government created this freaking mess. Now the government wants to solve this mess, and even Trump is on that bandwagon of the federal government is going to build freedom cities. The federal government could just sell land strategically located near places that they already own like near Nevada, near Boise, near Las Vegas, near Boise, Idaho. Do sell your stupid land to people that want to develop it and let them develop it. Get the federal government out of the business of owning that much land anyway.
Yeah, like the federal government can do a bunch of stuff to help with housing, and it doesn't have to do with the federal government can just build more housing. Like they're already doing that. First of all, like
Yeah.
it's already a thing. Like they're heavily involved in housing, and the other thing that they could do is like if they are going to do like anything with housing, which I think is it's not that it's inevitable, it's just that they are doing it. Like who's it? Ben Carson actually had a good plan initially to like incentivize zoning reform and have it associated with housing is it the HUD funding, right? I think it was HUD. And basically if you allowed people to build more stuff, again, if you got the government out of the way, then we're gonna tie you getting more HUD funding to that.
Right.
Conservatives did not like it because they said that it was a threat to single family homes and things like that. Which again, none of that would have prevented people from building and owning single family homes. It just would have allowed people to build more and new different types of homes instead.
Yeah. And conservatives buy into this zoning narrative, right? Where people they want neighborhoods controlled by the government. And
not just conservatives and like NIMBY
sorry.
progressives too. Like it's bipartisan.
Fair. I speak upstate New York conservative, but these are the people that I want to hear me. So I'm talking to conservatives. Liberals either listen to me or they don't. Liberals like my views on human rights. They like my anti-warness. They like my view on race. Like they don't like it when I say like, gun control is racism, but they do like those things about me. Conservatives don't listen to me about things like zoning. They think zoning is impactful and positive, and I'm telling you that it's not, because it abridges property rights for individuals. It empowers, we have a comment from Steve Becker, who is always on, it empowers businesses like BlackRock to go into a business when the government is controlling the output of single family homes being built. It allows businesses like BlackRock to see profit there and to see the potential for buying more regulations to prevent even more growth in that market that they don't control. So that's the thing that we need to get rid of. That's the thing we need to do away with. The government created this problem. The government would serve us all by getting out of this problem.
Yeah. And just to touch on that BlackRock thing and to reinforce your point, they have a profit incentive because of the bad structure that government built there, right? Like because the government made those incentives possible. And you could get rid of that by reforming zoning. It's BlackRock is they're there to make money. They're going to just do whatever they can to make money, right? Like it's not a moral or immoral thing necessarily. They're amoral. They are looking to make money.
Correct. Without moral, right. Without
Yes.
regard for the morality of the situation. And they will get into this situation of selling their product as a moral benefit to society. And because the government has already broken small investors and made it almost impossible for them to break into owning multiple houses.
Yeah.
It used to be a thing that people did, and now it's like dead.
It's very, very hard to manage. And then there's other stuff too. Like we'll see like the some of the eviction reform stuff coming through New York State. That's also going to make things difficult if you don't have a lot of resources to be able to weather the challenges that come with that. And I don't think we want to get into that now, but we'll talk about we'll keep going on the freedom cities concept generally. Again, all you have to do is let cities grow where they need to grow. You don't need to have the government come in and build something and make it beautiful and nice. No, just let people do their thing. And cities are going to pop up where they make sense. Again, if you build a spot in a random like chunk of desert owned by BLM, like it might not make sense to have a city there. Like maybe there's not adequate roads to go there, or you have to build a massive superhighway. And I know folks are like, oh, it's going to create jobs. No, stop.
It does not. It doesn't. Like cities happen where there's a geographical advantage for a city to happen. Okay. New York City happened because there's a great port there and a great river, and there was access to fresh water before they got so many people they had to take fresh water from upstate New York. Like those things were real. There was a geographical advantage to it.
Yeah.
Three Rivers in Pennsylvania. Natural meeting places where the land is good and can provide a lot of crops. That's where a city starts.
Yeah. Like
You can't just put them anywhere. You can't just say drop a pen. There's a city. You know what I mean? It's not going to work.
yeah, it doesn't matter how nice it is, how much you plan it, whatever. If it doesn't make sense for a city to be there, you build around the stuff that already starts to make sense. And sometimes like those conditions change and you can move stuff. Like so,
Yeah.
Rochester made sense in part because the Erie Canal was built, but also it made sense because there's already like native settlement here because it was a good spot with Irondequoit Bay, which made it easy to get out to the lakes and
Right.
trade through that network. Like that's why the settlement existed here in the first place and why people started gathering around this space. But again, if you're gonna build it out in the there's probably a reason why there isn't a city out in the middle of nowhere yet. Like it's
right. And I mean, look, like they are challenging my notes. Like Abu Dhabi is like building this big huge city in the ocean, filling in, trust me, that's only proof of the concept of what I'm talking about, that they normally naturally occur, that it because of an advantage, a significant advantage of oil, they can afford to build this new style city. Like you can't just, I don't know, I love Trump sometimes, but you can't just drop a pen and be like, hey, Freedom City. It's not
listen,
going to work.
people think they could do it. I don't like that the mile what's the one in Saudi Arabia? Is that the one you're talking about too?
Yeah, Abu Dhabi did something like that, and then there is
they're just
Saudi
gonna build
Arabia.
like a big long city in the desert. Like okay,
Dubai is
Dubai.
it. Yeah, Dubai is the other one. They're doing these massive, huge, big island construction projects out in the ocean.
Yeah, and Steve Barry water mills under Genesee. Yeah, that's the other Genesee River. Like people build long rivers and whatnot. That's why Rochester also popped up, is because it was the end point of the river for all that stuff. But the one thing, well, the one thing I wanted to get to about the his speech related to the Freedom Cities, I'm surprised you didn't mention. He said he wanted to jumpstart the flying car industry.
Oh well, yeah. Actually, I didn't catch that part of it.
I thought you were going to jump on that. Like that's the good thing that happened
I
here.
didn't
Trump
catch that
is
part
going
of it.
to
like all researching the details of it and seeing how, if I could impress you with my knowledge of what exactly he was talking about. And then, of course, I did get fascinated by how much land the federal government owns and controls and how that could enhance, especially places like Las Vegas and Boise, if they just opened up some sales and said, hey, do something with this land. They have a couple bills in front of Congress where like they'll let local governances buy the land from the federal government and then hopefully
there's another bill from Senator Mike Lee, the Houses Act, helping open underutilized space to ensure shelter.
Too many letters. I don't an acronym. I don't need an acronym. That is too complicated. Just sell it. Just sell the land.
Well, that's basically what it does. It's like it allows the federal government to like sell federal land to for people to be able to build houses. But like
his caveat was to sell it to local governments. I want it to be just sold in the open market.
Just be sold. But so the other consideration too, like we were talking about, like, does it make sense to build a city here? Is you have to build like infrastructure around this stuff, right? Like, so it's a problem in like Arizona, for instance, where people sometimes do that. They're able to get like a chunk of land out in the middle of the desert and like, all right, we're going to build like a cul-de-sac here. Like we're going to build like a neighborhood. And they build it with the assumption like, oh, the nearby town is going to run like municipal water lines out to us. And then they don't want to. And then there's a big legal battle with local towns and they barely have enough water to sustain the residents of that region to begin with. And now they're like, oh, we got to run all these extra lines out here, or we got to run water trucks up to these like suburbs. And it's like a whole thing. And again, maybe it doesn't make sense to build the infrastructure there. Maybe it makes sense to, like, let's say if you didn't subsidize the infrastructure to kind of build around the existing places where there's already like water and ways of being able to get people the resources they need to live comfortably. Like if you want to go out and live in the desert, like that's fine, but you're gonna have to deal with it. Like just don't expect
that's your problem. Yeah. No, I get it, man. Like there is certain natural advantages to congregating around a city, but us rural upstate New Yorkers all have our own wells anyway, so we don't
Yeah,
We
right.
don't
But
care-
exactly like in
we
upstate
don't
New York, you're
care
going to
for
be able
your
to drill a
municipal
well that
water.
works.
We don't like the fluoride. You keep your fluoride with you.
Well, I'm gonna have good teeth.
That's
You
right.
know.
I don't know. I had fluoride when I was growing up. I turned out fine.
All right. Yeah. Now you're convincing me.
Yep.
Um, anyway, so yeah, Freedom Cities probably not a great idea, but flying cars, I don't know, maybe. I worry again. Government getting involved in flying cars, maybe not so great.
The less involved. I like New Hampshire's approach. Preemptively legal. You don't need an inspection. They can go on our roads. Mostly they'll be flying. The Jetson Act. The Jetson Act, Kevin. We talked about it
The
last show
Jetson
just a
Act.
little bit.
We
And
did.
the Freedom State is the state for me. That's where I'm going to retire to, New Hampshire. Except it's colder up there. I don't know. Nah.
New Hampshire. That's not
Ends up.
that much further north. You get more snow in upstate New York. That's what it is. They don't get as much of the lake effect.
Yeah. Do we have time to talk about Tucker Carlson and the January 6th committee, the things getting sideways?
We do not have time on the radio show because we have about 80 seconds left.
All right. You guys should come back and join us for the bonus show because A, I'm going to make fun of Tucker. B, I'm going to support some of the things he said. And C, you later.
See you later.
And
There we
see
go. I wish
later.
your timing's a little bit off. If you had said that like a little bit later, we could have just
I'm gonna work on my
ended
timing.
the show there.
Gonna get better
So
at this.
close, so close. No, but for folks who are listening on the radio, again, we always do these live Tuesday evenings, usually around 9 o'clock. And we'll have a discussion. So if you want to participate in the comments, make sure you join us Tuesdays, 9 o'clock, and the places we're streaming: the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson pages, Tim O'Connor pages, all those places we're always streaming. And of course, again, if you're listening to this on the radio and you're like, well, what did they say in those middle sections and then after the show? Subscribe to our podcast. Like we're all over the place. Just look for a Free Solution. You'll find our podcast, and then you'll get the full show, the whole thing, and not miss any of it. Yeah. All right. So with that, we do have to sign off for the radio portion of the show. The other part will continue on. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a wonderful night. All right. So we're out on the radio show. We can talk about Tucker Carlson if you'd like.
I do want to talk about the January 6th thing because I find that we travel in these circles where I think issues are resolved and then all of a sudden we get haunted by them again and society gets all worked up by them again. And so I guess the deal with Brian Sicknick, do people think that he died during the riots at the Capitol?
I don't know.
Officer Brian Sicknick, I don't know. I'd like
right. Oh, because initially that's what was reported is that he had died, but it ended up being a thing later.
There seems to be a kerfuffle about that.
Yeah. With a couple of the police officers who had died because there's the ones with the medical issues and the suicide and
yeah. So I heard on the news back then, like Brian Sicknick died of causes not related to the riot the day after it kind of had come out. But I heard it corrected on the news. So I was always surprised when people were upset about that. Like, I didn't quite get it. Like, so is the January 6th committee not telling the truth? Is that what's going on? Is that what this is all about?
I don't know. I mean, like it's, yeah, I gotta be honest, I didn't look at the Tucker Carlson thing all that much, so I have no idea like what people are mad about. I see people are mad at Tucker Carlson, and that's all I know.
Well, he is an exaggerator of certain things, and he's repetitive when he finds a subject that he knows people get upset over. Now, Chuck Schumer wants him taken off the air, like I don't know where Chuck is coming from. Like, I don't get that guy.
We don't got licenses. You can't do that.
Right. You can't.
He's free to be a butthead on the air. Like that's.
He took what the January 6th committee did was edit up a bunch of film and say, look, this was really horrible. And what Tucker Carlson said, here, let me have that film. Kevin McCarthy said, okay. and then he edited it and put it up on TV. It's like they both did
He's got his
kind
own
of the
spin.
same thing, you know?
Yeah, like I'm trying to read up on it right now because Kevin McCarthy had given January 6th footage to Tucker Carlson and his team.
Correct.
And some folks are mad about that. He tried to make it look like a relatively peaceful event in contrast to how the January 6th Commission and the media portrayed the event, which is like a violent attempted coup based on the lie of Donald Trump, being the actual winner of the election, right? So that's
right. He created some stress there for people.
Yes. Correct. So that's but lots of folks like it wasn't a peaceful protest and folks are there. And I mean, there were definitely people fighting. There were definitely people breaking stuff. There were lots of other people who were just kind of milling around, like crashing at bombs. But
it was mostly peaceful, Kevin.
Mostly peaceful. Yeah, there we go. I see what you did there.
I do have a criticism of the U.S. government.
Surprise.
I know, right? But there are still people in jail that haven't had their day in court, that haven't had due process granted to them. And I have a problem with that. I think that is an injustice. What do you think? Am I crazy?
If there are still folks who are kind of stuck in limbo, yeah, that's not great. And the terrible part is that happens to people all the time for like way less serious reasons, and they're just stuck without charges and without an official conviction.
It happens all the time, and that was what bail reform was supposed to take care of, guys. That was why Kevin and I and so many libertarians were like, all right, bail reform is not the worst thing in the world. Of course, when the heavy hand of government comes in and tries to fix something, goes too far. It took away a certain amount of judicial discretion. That was people engaged in repeating violent emotional breakdowns were just right back out on the streets and just dumb, stupidly done, overdone kind of thing, So not criticizing bail reform as a concept, not criticizing. It's where the rubber hits the road. I think maybe I'm wrong, and you tell me what you think. When we get judges who would be crap in that system after bail reform, right? Like they're like, oh, hang this guy, hang that guy, demonstrate some bias based on skin color and stuff like that. We'd be able to find them a lot easier because there would be a better standard. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
I kind of went in a circle on you, right? So I apologize.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. Can you repeat that again? Because I
can't even remember what I said.
You remember?
You got to riff off of what I just said. You don't have to answer it specifically. Just.
No. Well, I'll answer it this way, like a politician, and just talk about what I want to talk about.
Exactly what I was hoping to do. Yeah, that's what I.
I know. Right now, Governor Hochul and a lot of Democrats are kind of reconsidering bail reform right now, and maybe we'll go more into it next week. Which is that they're kind of saying that there should be what they want to take out specifically is the kind of least restrictive requirement of bail reform, and I don't know how that actually plays out. I think it's one of those, like, they want to look like they're doing something to respond to like higher crime, even though they're saying like crime is way down in Rochester. Like, okay, like relative to what?
Relative to what? Exactly.
Yeah, Governor Hochul's like, yeah, crime's down like 11%. Like, yeah, it's down slightly from like its massive highs over the last 3 years. Like, and again, I'm not someone panicking about crime all the time, but like it's kind of bad in Rochester. Again, 5 people were shot like within sight of my house. Like, it's not great.
No, that's not cool.
Yeah, but so they want to look like they're doing something about it. Mayor Malik Evans is in support of changing the bill. I'm a little bit disappointed that Democrats like have failed to be able to explain the reasoning behind bail reform. It's one of those things, like, I don't know if they were never really for it. They just were kind of like riding the wave of like people feeling like there need to be some criminal justice reform, never bought into like the reasoning behind it. Like, I have a lot of complicated feelings on bail reform.
It went to my theory of incompetence bordering on malice, right? Like that's a reality, So again, like Tucker does what Hannity does. They recycle stuff that they know gets people emotionally excited. This one, I think there's the most valid piece of the conversation is whether people are still being denied due process, whether they're being denied exculpatory evidence, whether we're not getting
Yeah.
the real story on Ray Epps. I feel like Ray Epps was there instigating a bunch of stuff, and this guy was at the gates. This guy was talking trash, and I want to know who he is, man. I want to know more about that guy. Unless I think he's FBI guy, but maybe, maybe I'm wrong, and so maybe he has a right to his privacy. I don't know.
I'd say it's definitely not unheard of for agent provocateurs to be involved in protests and to try to see like, oh, who's gonna bite, who's gonna like join me, who can I egg on to like throw a punch, throw a bottle,
Exactly.
whatever. And that happens in a lot of protests that are really tense. It's it'll happen in like anti-police protests too. Like and there's back when the Black Lives Matter thing happened, like there are people that like kind of seem like they might have been involved in the police department going and trying to egg people on and smash stuff. So then the police seemed like they had an excuse to like, oh, okay, it's gotten violent now, like time to like run in and shut everything down.
Yeah.
And there might have been some of that going on January 6th, but I don't know.
I suspect that there was.
Yeah.
I feel strongly that there was. I feel strongly that the active portion of the federal government has demonstrated a proclivity to participate in events like this to make them what we think they are, like to fulfill the narrative and to further, like you're saying, like let's make sure we catch the really bad people so we egg a few of them on.
Yeah.
I'm not. We know they've done it. They're still doing it. They're looking for their next fall guy right now, and that's a reality.
Yeah, it could be. I said, my overall take on January 6th is that it was still a bad idea, and
Well,
people
yeah,
should have known
yeah,
better.
yeah. It's hard to
Yeah,
argue that. Like there are pieces of it that were absolutely horrible. The storm in the Capitol stuff, I get it, like, but not. I w- I w- I would have really, even though I joke and I say it was mostly peaceful protest, and I think for 90% of the people that were there, it was.
yeah.
It's
As I
just
said,
I
I
was
know
talking to a
people
guy
who
today.
were.
He's like, I freaking left at 11 o'clock in the morning. There was obviously some shit that was going to go down. Like,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
so I know other folks who were there, and that's what they kind of told me is they were there. They watched the speech, and the people heading towards the Capitol building, like, nope, everything looks tense. I'm gonna stay the heck away from that.
I am not going that way. So they could sense the issue, and so there's some truth to what was going on. There's I do think it's political fodder for the left and they use it constantly. Um,
Oh, sure, why
so
not?
we're
Again,
gonna have to kind of live that out, man. I guess
yeah,
with me and you keep
marketing.
talking about saying, hey, I wasn't there. I don't go to crap like that. I want the people that are in jail to get their due process. That means a lot to our society, and that's
Yeah,
the most important piece that's still left from this thing.
yeah,
And of course,
no,
like they don't talk about that. So I don't
no,
know.
and it'd be great if we got perform based on like that element of it, but it doesn't seem to have happened. I was hoping that would move people, but nope, nope.
No, people get caught up in the wrong pieces of it. Like
Yeah,
these guys deserve the process. Here's another one. I don't know if you ever follow Spike Cohn at all?
yeah, of course.
All right, so this week he shared a tweet, and I like to talk about how I'm anti-death penalty and why. And our rigorous adversarial judicial system is one of the reasons why I'm against the death penalty. And about 3 years ago, in March, the state of Alabama executed Nathaniel Woods, a man who never
Mhm.
actually killed anyone. And that's Spike is a gifted writer. It just he's good. But Nate and his roommate Spencer had been accused of selling drugs. The Birmingham, Alabama police came to their home. Spencer said the officers began assaulting Nate, so Spencer shot the police officers. Nate had no gun and didn't shoot anyone. Three of the officers died. During Nate's entire trial, Spencer was his key witness. Spencer asserted that Nate had nothing to do with the shooting, that Spencer shot the officers in defense of himself and Nate. And here's the issue: the adversarial process allows certain exclusions to trial based on, or certain exclusions to evidence. So Spencer's testimony was not actually allowed to defend Nate in the court of law. Nate, they all agreed, the cops that lived, Nate didn't shoot anyone. Nate's not a guy that killed anyone. The police officers were able to introduce evidence that said Nate, who killed no one, had been shouting obscenities at the officers earlier in the week or earlier in the month. And so right. So that's their excuse for shooting this guy. And now he got put to death. There's no way. Like, again, this is a crucial, crazed, depraved injustice, and it's based on our adversarial system, and it's based on rules of evidence, and it's based on prosecutorial maneuvering and police department posturing, and it should have never happened. Spencer, on the other hand, I get it, man. That whatever happens, happens. That's it. So I don't know. I don't like the death penalty. I just thought I'd like to throw that out there for everybody.
Yeah. No,
I do follow Spike. He comes up and he has good stories.
He does.
Holding feet to the fire when it comes to these things. I think it's important.
Yeah. Tries to introduce some level of accountability when he's talking about this stuff. I'm like, hey, this is a story that it's missed, because there's a lot of these like awful stories about like interactions with like the state generally that ends up getting missed in the mainstream media, right? Like for whatever reason doesn't catch fire in the same way that like some other stuff happens, right? Like there's some element to it that complicates it, so like the left doesn't want to touch it, or the right doesn't want to touch it, or whatever, and right, and Spike's just like
he jumped all over Waco, Kevin, and that's always been. It's been a sore subject because I hated it. I hated it when I saw it, right? And I talked about it a little bit then, and I was disgusted by what I saw. But Spike fearlessly goes after what happened at Waco, and I respect him for it. It was a tragedy what happened. Ruby Ridge, it was a tragedy. These things were overdone, overacting by the government. That resulted in people dying, and who's going to hold them accountable without? It's an awkward, when you're part of the duopoly, when you're part of that system, it's hard for you to take a harsh stance on those topics, and so that's one of the reasons why I had to step out of that.
With the Waco stuff, I know it's interesting because he had jumped on like the ATF doing like a memorial post for like their people, the ATF people who had died in the Waco raid, right? And
imperfect, right? I get it. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I was uncomfortable with that, but also he took on Waco.
Like it's a little bit of a tough thing to do, but like also, and I wouldn't expect the ATF to ever do this, but acknowledging like, man, they did not need to burn a building down full of like children. Like that didn't need to happen.
It didn't need to happen. They could have, and this is a reality. Back then, everybody was talking about how they could have taken David Koresh in multiple times. That they let him go back there. That they had to confront him at his property to prove what they were amped up for that, right? That they could have taken him in on the charges that they wanted him to be taken in on. He was going into town like 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Like
They wanted a confrontation. Yeah, that's
that they wanted a confrontation and they wanted to win it. And I think that comes across as plausible, right?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. And unfortunately, a bunch of folks who may have been even victims in this whole thing became victims of government violence instead.
Oh yeah, that's another good point, right? Like they compounded David Koresh's victimization of those people through their act of aggression. And that's what war does, right? No
Yep.
matter what, it drags in innocent victims. So the first casualty of war is the truth. The second casualty of war is innocent victims. Like, that's a reality. They're always going to be there.
All
Collateral
right.
damage, bro.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm ready to call it a night.
Yeah.
Now
Ended
edit
it
your
on a
bullshit
sad
out
note,
of
man. Sorry, bro.
That's all right. Thanks everyone who joined us. I think Shelly you joined us a bit later today, maybe.
Yeah,
But
it seems like, but
it's
she
all
said
right.
good
Glad
evening,
you're
and it's
here.
always good to see
Good
Shelly
evening.
out there.
You know,
And Steve
but
and John,
yeah,
Patty. My brother made a comment. We missed it. Like, I wanted to
we
put it up,
did.
but we had moved on to a different subject. I'm going to
Yes.
figure out who Facebook user is because he had some fire comments. But
Yeah.
my
Let's
brother
go
said
back and
something
check the
about
group.
no zoning and people will live in sheds. Okay,
And it's
you
not
know,
necessarily a
all right.
bad thing.
If that's what they want, that's what they want.
Yeah. No, if you want to build a tiny house, you do your thing.
Exactly.
Build an accessory dwelling unit. Go ahead. Build them
Do it.
ADUs.
Especially if your neighbors agree to it, man, or they say, "Hey, just build a fence so I ain't got to look at it."
I've lived in like what was an ADU. It was like a weird little tiny apartment built above the garage of my great grandmother's house that was built for my great great grandmother, who was apparently like 5 feet tall. So the ceilings were like 6'3", so very low ceilings.
Nice.
You know, it was I kid you not, like a 250 square foot apartment. It was not big.
Yeah.
But you know,
you
that's
were
why I
happy,
lived
though.
immediately after college. It was inexpensive. You know, I was paying my relative
Yeah.
for it. It was great. You know, but building something like that would be legal in most places today, and it helped my great great grandmother, and it helped me and my wife when we're just getting started.
That's what zoning has destroyed, right? Like,
Yeah.
that helping each other out kind of thing. This, I accept the terms of this rental. You accept my money.
Yeah. Like,
Zoning's
I know it's
destroyed.
like, yeah,
Code
but
enforcement
you couldn't
destroyed.
build an apartment like that anywhere else. Like, it would probably not pass any sort of like code. But like for me, it worked. You know, for me and my wife, it's all we needed.
You know, zoning's a problem when the government goes to build houses and they have to get the zoning changed, and just like that, they do.
Yeah,
it's
always, every time. Like,
magic.
every house in Rochester has to have like variances.
Yeah,
But
which is ridiculous.
yeah. All right. Anyway,
Yeah,
we're calling it a night. Thanks again for joining us, folks. Have a great night. Take care.
Good night.